was terrible. But it was very rare at that point. But there was still some problem. It was bad enough that my daughter was 9 months old and I couldn't even pick her up. So that tells you the level of pain, the injury that I had. So, and the 7 months that I was off of work, I was in therapy 3 days a week. So I'm in physical therapy 3 days a week trying to restore my body. And quite literally, the doctor told me, he said, well, the L4, L5 area, he said the L4, L5 area in your back is the place that wears out on everybody over time. He said, but essentially what you've done is you've pushed yourself 25 or 30 years down the road. And so what he was telling me was, you are a 35-year-old with the spine of a 60-year-old. And so, and like I said, I always had a tremendous work ethic. And that's when being involved in the church was a huge help, because we had friends, good people around us that could help us out. And we had a support structure. But there was, for me personally, it was a really bad time for me as a man. Just feeling worthless, and I couldn't work to provide. So let me back up for a second. Because we had lost a child, and because she had been told she could never have children, when she was able to have a child and Irene came along, we knew she was going to be a stay-at-home mom to be able to raise Irene. Because what's the point of having a child, miraculously being able to have a child, and then you're going to put them in daycare all day while you work? So both of us had come to the conclusion that she was going to stay home. And so she stopped with her career and stayed home. She was a full-time mom. And so when I got hit on the motorcycle, we had no income. And the insurance company, whenever I had purchased my insurance for the motorcycle, I said, I want the motorcycle insurance to be written exactly like the car insurance that I have. And I know that the car insurance has lost wages on it. Well, I came to find out after I got hit on the motorcycle and can't work that the motorcycle insurance did not have lost wages on the insurance policy. So now, not only am I off work, can't work, she's been out of the workforce now for a little bit of time, and we have no insurance to cover our wage loss from me not being able to work. And so I couldn't do things around the house. I couldn't help, and I couldn't even take care of the kids so that she could do it. So I really felt worthless as a man. And I remember we had just planted a big garden, and I was so frustrated with the fact that I couldn't do anything. And this huge garden that I had taken the time to till all the ground and plant, and now my wife in that situation was taking care of the kids, doing everything, and the Lord met all of our needs. We weren't in danger of a house being foreclosed on or anything like that. We always had enough to pay the bills and scrape by with just enough. But I wasn't bringing money in personally, and I couldn't even go out and work in the garden. I couldn't help with the kids. It was just laying around and going to physical therapy. And so I got frustrated one day, and I took a big bowl outside with me. We had a lot of bean plants. And I remember that Rhoda looked at me and she said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm going out to pick beans." And she said, "Are you sure you should be doing that?" I said, "I'm going to figure out how." So I went out to the garden, and I couldn't really bend over to pick beans off the plants. So I literally laid down on the ground in between the rows of plants, and I put the bowl above my head, and I laid in the dirt, and I picked the beans off the plants and put them in the bowl above my head, and I'd push the bowl and wiggle down through the dirt on my back, and that's how I picked the beans in the garden, so I could at least do something that made me feel like I wasn't a worthless human being. And because that's what I felt like. I felt like there was no, my wife had to do everything. I couldn't do anything, and I'm not making any money to support my family, and I've got 3 kids. So for me, it was a tough time. And then I had to humble myself to ask guys from the church to come and cut my grass because my boys weren't old enough to cut it. And I mean, that's when I really got humbled. Like, I really learned humility through that stage of my life. With finances for the home, like I said, while I was off work, God was supernaturally supplying everything we needed. But I couldn't work, and I couldn't even collect unemployment. I couldn't collect unemployment because you have to be able to work. And I physically was unable to work. So I couldn't collect unemployment either. So we were in this like weird position. So I started doing just odd jobs. So I was collecting scrap metals, and I'm going to get money for scrap metal, and that's how we were able to buy groceries on a consistent basis. I was able to run scrap, and then it got to the point where I had to have a job. So I had to really start looking to find something that I could do, because I couldn't lift heavy objects. I really couldn't lift much at all. And then I was even stuck where I couldn't even take a job as a security guard, because either you have to sit for long periods of time or you have to stand for long periods of time, and I couldn't do either one of those for a long period of time. So I had to have something where I could sit when I needed to sit, stand when I needed to stand, because there's no telling how long I could stand or not. Because what would happen was that central protrusion, it was actually choking the spinal cord off. So depending on how I moved and the level of inflammation, sometimes I would lose feeling in my legs as I was walking. I would just get this terrible pain. I mean, there was pain all the time, but then I would get this piercing pain, and I would have no feeling in my legs. I almost smacked all the teeth out of my mouth one day walking to the sink, because I got 2 strides away from the sink, and one of those pains came, and my legs collapsed, and I went falling toward the counter and grabbed the counter before I smacked my teeth on it. But it was things like that where how can I find a job where I'm not going to be a risk to everyone around me and myself? So the casino, there was a casino that had just been built, and I put in for the surveillance department, and I didn't know anything about casinos or casino games or anything, but I put in for the job, and I interviewed for it. I ended up getting the job, but the surveillance guys are watching all the cameras, and they're in their own room in their own building. They're outside of the casino. So I could kind of sit, stand, walk, do whatever I wanted inside the room as long as I'm watching cameras. So it was ideal for the situation. I didn't really have to lift anything, controlling, typing and controlling a joystick. So that's what it was Christmas, just a couple days before Christmas was the first day I worked. Or I'm sorry, it was a couple days after Christmas was the first day that I started working for that casino, because I was in the hiring process the week of Christmas, and then it was, I think, December 29th of 2011, I finally got employed again. So we went from the beginning of June until the very end of December with absolutely no consistent salary coming in. The casino, I've never worked at a place that had a a heaviness to it like that place did. There was 1,500 employees and not one happy person. Everyone was miserable. And some of them were making great money, but you could see it, you could feel it. So it was depressing to be there. And whether you can understand it or not, I had to see all the worst things that the world has to offer happen.